I'm staying over tonight. They accommodate us? Excuse me? Come on, I told you before. I'm watching a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late in the evening, I said we'd all be staying here. During her son's absence, the mother-in-law arrived unannounced with 7 friends. Having not been informed and having plans of my own, I tried to decline. Then, but you'll be back soon, right? We'll just drop our stuff and head out for a while. Can you prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for us? She seemed to disregard my situation and proceeded as if everything was settled. What's more, I recognized the necklace shimmering around her neck. I had endured the mother-in-law's brazen behavior without confrontation for so long, but I finally reached my limit. I can't. I have a trip planned starting now. What? A trip? Who are you going with? The usually non-confrontational me responding with a no surprised her. Having had enough of her excessive harassment, I finally drew the line. Please give me back that necklace. It was time for the mother-in-law to face consequences for her actions. My name is Michelle Gorman, a 30-year-old housewife. After getting married, I used my administrative experience to work as a computer class instructor. My husband, Mike, serves as the president of a subsidiary that his father owns, and he seems busy every day. Though he sometimes looks deep in thought, I'm relieved to see him relaxed, especially when we go on our favorite movie dates. He'd say, "I feel lighter when I'm with you." I was glad if I could ease any of his burdens. I wish I could offer advice or suggestions, but I struggle to express my opinions. Ever since I was young, I preferred listening to others than speaking about myself. This is my older brother, who's 4 years older. Always looked out for me. I used to dislike that about myself, but thanks to Mike's reassurance, I've gained some confidence. Mike has an older brother who serves as the vice president in their father's company. His wife Mindy is close in age to me, and we get along well. She's a career-driven woman, both reliable and kind. I admire how she stands her ground and expresses her opinions, yet she is also understanding and adaptable. Seeing her confront the mother-in-law was truly impressive. However, since they live far away, I regret not being able to see them often. On the other hand, the mother-in-law behaves with the air of a company president's daughter, always confident, yet her stubbornness and arrogance are evident. Michelle, you're the wife of Mike, the president. You should quit being a computer instructor and fully support him. And fully support your husband. She would reprimand me, overwhelming me with her pressure. Mike would back me up, but she would remain displeased. I sometimes felt relieved that we lived apart. I hoped for a peaceful life with Mike and eventually to be blessed with children. But suddenly, Mike's father passed away from a heart attack. The news was so unexpected, it was hard for everyone to accept. Yet, Mike and his brother had to think about the company's future. Mike decided to stay in New York for a while. I returned home and waited for Mike's call. With the added responsibilities on the two of them, I was worried. After discussions with his brother, it was decided that Mike would transfer to the New York headquarters. His brother became the president, and Mike was appointed vice president. We searched for a house in New York and settled on a pre-built single-family home. Although it was a bit far from the station, it was in a less urban area, providing a sense of security. The house had good sunlight, promising a comfortable life. I wanted to do everything I could to support him. Then just like that, a month flew by. And home. I'm hungry. Thanks for working so late. I'll get dinner ready. Thanks. Hey Michelle, my mom said she wants to come over this weekend. Is that okay? I had been concerned that she might be feeling down since my father-in-law passed away, so this was a relief to hear. Of course. We still have some areas to tidy up, but she's more than welcome. Thanks. I'll let her know. Oh, maybe I should invite my brother and his wife too. Yeah, that sounds good. As inappropriate as it may sound, moving here made it easier for me to frequently meet Mindy, my sister-in-law, which was a pleasant surprise. That weekend, we all gathered to catch up on the current situation and share memories of my father-in-law. It's really sad that Dad's gone, but I felt I shouldn't be down forever, so I started taking up a hobby. Seeing my mother-in-law's cheerful face brought relief. She always carried herself with elegance, always wearing beautiful dresses and lovely accessories. Today she looked stylish with a pale purple scarf that stood out. She seemed to have lost a little weight, but her firmness in advising Mike and his brother on company matters hasn't changed. However, since my father-in-law's passing, I felt that her strict remarks towards me increased. Michelle, we're running low on drinks. Could you go buy some? Jessica, I can go get them. Oh, can you? That would be helpful then. She seemed to be more commanding towards me than she was with Mindy. I thought she might be struggling with the loss of her husband, so I decided to observe and let her comments slide for a while. After dinner, Mike drove everyone home, and the night came to an end. Since then, for some reason my mother-in-law began visiting our home frequently. She started criticizing my housework and complaining about Mindy. Moreover, she began going through our fridge without permission, which left me stunned. Michelle, Mike is so busy right now. You should pay more attention to the meals you prepare for him. What if he collapses too? Yes, I'll be more careful. Also, there's still trash here. Can't you clean up perfectly? I'm sorry. It continued like this. It felt as though she was picking on me just to pass the time. But when Mindy would visit, she would quickly leave, saying she had other things to do. She said it wasn't because she disliked me, but I felt otherwise. I thought about finding a job to spend less time at home, but even after finding one, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified. Michelle, we ran out of barbecue sauce at our place, so get some while you're out. Oh, I brought a container with me, so let me take some leftovers. Her audacity sometimes left me dumbfounded. She could just as easily buy premium ingredients from an upscale store. Then, an incident occurred. A necklace I cherished disappeared. It was a keepsake from my mother, which I had kept safely on a shelf in my room. The only person I could think of was my mother-in-law, who frequently visited. Though I didn't want to suspect her, she often looked around our home and probably knew where most things were. Despite searching everywhere, it remained missing, so I decided to ask her about it. That's when she responded with a fierce yell. You probably lost it yourself. How dare you suspect me? What kind of person are you? I'm sorry. I searched everywhere I could think of, but I couldn't find it. It's a keepsake from my mother and it means a lot to me. More than the anger I felt towards being accused, I was devastated about losing my mother's keepsake and tears began to roll down. I don't care. It's just a necklace. Why don't you just have Mike buy you a new one? It's not about getting a new one. I realized she wouldn't understand my feelings and decided not to discuss it further. However, incidents kept occurring where money from my wallet and other items around the house would go missing. Though I kept a watchful eye on my mother-in-law's actions, I never saw her take anything, be confused and emotionally exhausted. I confided in Mindy, who asserted that my mother-in-law was definitely the prime suspect. No one else had access to our home. The realization saddened me, yet there was no concrete evidence of her theft, and I couldn't understand why she would do such a thing, especially since she continued to live a lavish lifestyle from the inheritance left by my father-in-law. Seeing my distress, Mindy made a suggestion. Little did I know at the time where this would lead. About 2 weeks after speaking to Mindy, I'll be off then. Michelle, just relax and enjoy your trip. Okay, be careful. Mike and his brother were going on a business trip to meet with a company from another state. Knowing about their trip, Mindy thought it might be a good time for us to take a break and invited me on a short vacation. Having been mentally and physically drained recently, the idea of a getaway was appealing. I packed early and placed my travel bag near the entrance, waiting for departure time. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be, I checked the video feed to find my mother-in-law. Not only her, but she was accompanied by several others. Hello, Michelle. I brought some friends. Please open up. Opening in the front door, I found my mother-in-law and about 7 of her friends, all carrying large bags. Were they going somewhere? I thought to myself, we're staying here tonight. This makes us comfortable. Didn't I mention it? We're seeing a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late, we're all staying here. This was news to me. My departure time was approaching. Oh, did I inconvenience you? I heard from Jessica that you were open to having us. I hadn't heard anything of the sort, and it seemed she was making up the story as she went along. Thanks to my reply, she looked taken aback. But you'll be back soon, right? We'll drop our bags and head out for a bit. Just prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for us. Ignoring the fact that I had plans, I knew I couldn't let this slide. I did. I'm going on a trip. A trip? With whom? Said Mindy. Oh, just with Mindy. You can go anytime. We've come all this way just for today. How long are you going to make us wait? Just then, I noticed something glinting around her neck. Wait, that necklace you're wearing? But to my astonishment, it was the same necklace that was a keepsake for my mother. Jessica, where did you get that necklace? Why, it's just one of my collections. Is there a problem? She answered with a smug look. That can't be right. That necklace is a limited edition, and not many are out there. While I was exchanging words with her, Mindy arrived. I was wondering why you didn't show up at our meeting place and didn't contact me. So this is what was happening. I'm sorry, I couldn't get in touch. Mindy, seeing my expression, instantly knew something was amiss. What happened? I got upset because the necklace she's wearing is the same one as my mother's that went missing recently. Oh, the one you kept in that box? Mindy purposefully said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Suddenly my mother-in-law, trying to keep it from her friends, whispered to us, "Can you stop this? It's embarrassing. Do you want to accuse me of theft?" Yes, honestly, I find it suspicious. Mindy answered firmly, "Do you have any proof that I stole it? It's embarrassing having such unreasonable daughters-in-law. Please don't make a scene in front of my friends." With that, she turned back to her friends with a smile. "Well, let's go inside, everyone." As she attempted to move inside, I remembered something. The initials. My mother's initials are engraved on the necklace. "Jessica, can I have a look, please?" Mindy quickly went behind her to check. Enough of this. And what's your mother's name? It's Kate Young, so the initials should be KYE. There it is. The initials KY. The friends looked horrified and stepped back. "Stop this? I didn't come here for this. Let's go, everyone." "We're not letting you go." The friends, sensing the tension, quickly muttered, "We're not involved," and headed towards the subway. "Wait, it's a mistake." As she tried to follow her friends, someone stopped her. "What are you doing here?" "Huh, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip?" Standing there was Mike. Turns out, Mike's business trip was actually scheduled for the next day. But to investigate his mother's actions, he had purposely given her a false date. Mindy had informed Mike about the missing items from the house after he had confided in her. Initially, Mike was skeptical, but upon visiting his childhood home and noticing several items identical to ours, he began to suspect theft. However, without evidence, he knew she could easily deny it, leading him to come up with today's plan. Aichin inviting friends for an overnight stay was unexpected, but he was certain his mother would visit if she believed he wasn't home. "What do you want at our house?" "I was just leaving." As she tried to leave, I stopped her. "Give it back. That necklace. Isn't that necklace the keepsake from Michelle's parents?" "Why do you have it, Mom?" "It's not what you think. I found it in my purse. Michelle must have set me up." Seemingly fearing the disadvantageous position she was in, my mother-in-law suddenly shifted the blame to me. "Do you really think such a lie would work? There's no way Michelle would do something like that. First, give the necklace back to Michelle. We'll talk after that." Reluctantly, she took off the necklace, threw it on the ground, and tried to run away. "Hey, wait." The three of us tried to chase her but stopped shortly. But we no longer needed to. Why? 10 police officers stood in front of her. I too was unsure about what was happening, just staring at the bizarre scene. Then one of the officers said, "We received a report from a local resident. They said someone who seemed to be causing a ruckus here was often seen entering this house when the owners were away. They asked us to come quickly." "What are you talking about?" "I'm the mother of the son living here." Getting the police involved in a family matter, my mother-in-law retorted, looking annoyed. "Wait, what do you mean she entered when we weren't home? I never did such a thing. I always come when you're home." Did the informant say anything else? When we asked the police, they mentioned that someone had witnessed my mother-in-law sneaking into our backyard, likely using a spare key to get inside. Indeed, we had a spare key hidden beneath a plant pot in the backyard. This realization gave us chills and also explained the missing items. Mick had considered this possibility and was planning to observe her actions while we were out to date, but he never expected to find out the truth in this manner. "Mom, why were you coming into our house when we weren't home?" he asked. "It's all lies. You're gonna believe some unknown person's story. But you did have my precious necklace, didn't you?" I said. "I told you I found it in my purse." One of the officers stepped in, saying calmly, "Let's talk about this at the station." But I didn't do anything. My mother-in-law protested. "Mike, say something." "Mom, stop this." "I can't understand why you did this," Mike said, clearly upset. Upon hearing her son's words, the mother-in-law collapsed to the ground. But just when it seemed like she had nowhere left to run and was feeling defeated, she suddenly flew into a rage. "Because after your father passed away, I felt so lonely. And seeing her always so cheerful, I couldn't stand it. I felt better seeing her troubled. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt," she yelled, her irrational reasoning becoming clear. Mike was red-faced hearing her words. "Mike, wait, let me speak." Feeling the need to confront the issue head-on, Michelle stepped in front of an increasingly angry Mike. "I understand where you're coming from, Jessica. Perhaps I've been neglectful by always brushing off our talks. However, Stealing is a different matter entirely. Did you want to upset me? Don't be ridiculous. Did you find joy in pushing someone to their limits with such a twisted and dirty scheme? Did that fill the void of your loneliness? Shut up. What do you know about me? If you're feeling down, then tell us. We can't read minds. Don't make fun of me. Why would I tell you anything? You worthless daughter-in-law? No, Michelle's right. Seeing the situation wasn't progressing, the police intervened, suggesting they move to the station. Are you really going to take me in? I can't believe this. Despite her resistance, given the eyewitness accounts of the unlawful entry and the suspicion of theft from possessing my belongings, the police decided to question my mother-in-law. And so she was promptly arrested on charges of unlawful entry and theft. She wasn't convinced, continuously protesting, "Get me a lawyer. I'm innocent and I can't eat this garbage." However, when her father visited her during visitation, he exploded in anger, telling her to deeply reflect on her actions. And to that, her attitude completely changed as she cried and apologized. Considering her typically carefree behavior, he seemed to be the only authority she wouldn't defy. He further told her that unless she sincerely reflected on her actions, she shouldn't think of having a home to return to. Reluctantly, she seemed to accept the reality. Perhaps losing her husband had left my mother-in-law in search of her place, where her fancy clothes and jewelry merely an armor to keep herself strong. I even began to wonder if her different attitudes towards me and my sister-in-law were just attempts to mask her vulnerabilities. However, her excessive desires and inability to control them are a separate issue. Making wrong judgments led to this unfortunate incident. I was surprised to see the event escalate to this magnitude, but realizing that she had been using the spare key to enter our house without our knowledge genuinely terrified me. Later, I found out that the couple living diagonally across from us had reported her. The wife, who works from home, had noticed my mother-in-law entering our yard suspiciously multiple times and found it odd. I'm nothing but grateful for their brave actions. Since then, we've been leading a peaceful life. Just to be safe, we changed our locks and stopped hiding a spare key in the yard. Mike severed ties with his mother and made her promise not to contact us ever again. If she attempted to, he warned of legal action. After her release, she returned to her rural childhood home and is reportedly leading a humble life, a stark contrast to her past lavish lifestyle. Being watched by her father, she helps around the house from early morning. I truly hope she reevaluates her past excessive actions. Meanwhile, my own father has moved in with us. In case my mother-in-law decides to pay another unexpected visit, he's here to ensure my safety. But there's another reason he's with us. I'm currently expecting our first child. Anticipating the birth of his grandchild, my kind father and the support of Mike make me want to be a mother who embodies both tenderness and strength. While money and possessions can provide a sense of fulfillment, it's the presence of loved ones that truly fills the heart. We're discussing living arrangements, and surrounded by those dear to us, we aim to protect our peaceful daily lives. You better get out of that wheelchair fast, or you're gonna die. Up from behind me, desperately trying to stop the accelerating wheelchair, I can hear the cheerful voice of Tyler. I frantically pulled the brake of the wheelchair with my hands. He was a man careless with money, but still, we were supposed to have pledged our love that day. While struggling on the unstoppable wheelchair, anger welled up in me more than sadness. Thud, the wheel got caught in something, and I was thrown from the wheelchair. As a large noise echoed behind me, and I lost consciousness. And the next day, when I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Looking to the side, Tyler was crying on the next bed. After a while, noticing that I was looking, Tyler started talking with a flattering smile. "Hey, me, you're okay. I'm glad. I got hit by a car, and my leg, getting more and more emotional, Tyler pulled off the blanket. There was Tyler's body with only one leg attached. Hey, you're gonna help me, right? We're married, aren't we?" I refused. Huh? Not thinking I would refuse, Tyler was dumbfounded. Who's gonna help, huh? I decided to vent all my thoughts. My name is Amy Moore. I'm a 45-year-old illustrator. I liked being active when I was young, and I even participated in national swimming competitions during my student days. Even as a working adult, I enjoyed various sports without change, but about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a certain disease, and I can no longer put strength into my left leg. I did not hear the diagnosis directly, but with a leg that has little to no sensation, I cannot walk. And now I am living in a wheelchair. My husband Tyler is a year older, and we met at a group date. My house was originally wealthy, and my father was a well-known company president in society. So many people, both men and women, wanted to benefit from our wealth. However, my father never showed favoritism towards me or my siblings, and despite the privileged environment, there was no return for pleasing him. I grew tired of people approaching me for my family's money. Amidst all of this, Tyler was the only one who seemed to genuinely care about me, not my wealth. Our relationship blossomed and we enjoyed simple dates like picnics and mountain climbing, and celebrated our anniversaries at each other's homes. We were happily nurturing our love, and after 3 years of dating, we got married. Our new home was conveniently located near my in-laws' house, and they adored me, my father-in-law, and I bonded over our shared love for sports, and we often attended games together. We had been married for 10 years, and although we were not blessed with children, we were content with our lives. Tyler's attitude towards me completely shifted, and he began to demand that my family pay for the cost of making our home accessible and hiring a helper. Of course, my father refused to pay for it. I had initially planned to cover the expenses with my savings and future salary, but when I told Tyler, he gave me an unexpected response. He said that my inheritance would decrease if I used my savings. I was taken aback by his words and questioned why he was bringing up my inheritance. Tyler quickly changed his tone and apologized, saying he made a mistake and that he thought we would need a lot of money in the future. I was not convinced by his poor excuse, but I reluctantly brushed it off as his stinginess. However, Tyler continued to bring up my inheritance and insurance, and eventually he stopped making excuses and started suggesting that we switch to a more expensive insurance plan. I found myself unable to understand Tyler's behavior. Despite his objections, I decided to use my savings and bonus from that year to fund the renovations and hire a housekeeping service 3 times a week. With the house now accessible, I was able to do the housework even in a wheelchair, so 3 times a week was enough. The person in charge of the housekeeping service was an older woman with a kind demeanor, and I enjoyed having tea with her during breaks. However, it seemed that Tyler did not like her, and he often complained about her. The way she folded the laundry was different. The order in which she arranged the washed dishes was different, and sometimes he even felt the taste of the food was different. All of these were such nitpicks that could be called fault-finding. And one day, I finally exploded in anger. "Why do you say such rude things?" he asked. It's true, right? She's getting money for such a shoddy job. The world is being taken for granted. Besides, we're to pay for housework. Have her do it for free. There's no way that can happen. Tyler was momentarily taken aback by my ferocity, but he soon began to smirk, and then he said something unbelievable. "Else, if you insist, then fine," he said. "Else, I'll deduct the same amount we are paying her from our living expenses." What? I felt dizzy with Tyler's incomprehensible decision. We had been paying the in-charge woman about $1,000 a month. Half of that amount I had been contributing by adding to the living expenses from my own savings. But no, Tyler said he was going to put that $1,000 into his own allowance instead of the living expenses. Our living expenses were already stretched thin, so if Tyler didn't contribute, I would have to make up the difference. In other words, my own-of-pocket contribution would go from $500 to $1,500, basically tripling. Holding my temple strongly, I answered, "If you deduct $1,000, your contribution to the living expenses becomes $500. Where do you think I am going to find the extra $1,000? Well, it's your whim, so you should pay for it. You're earning, aren't you?" I couldn't believe it. It's true that after falling ill, I had bravely gone independent and was succeeding. But my income was just a bit higher than when I was a company employee. If I had to deduct another $1,000, I wouldn't be able to save any money. However, Tyler showed no signs of backing down. Plain but promise me one thing. Make sure you save that $1,000 properly. Got it. This with Tyler cheerfully agreeing, I felt nothing but anxiety. And that anxiety soon proved to be well-founded. Tyler stopped complaining about the housework agency, but correspondingly, Tyler stopped doing any housework. Hey, even though we're asking the housework agency, we should do the daily chores. What are you talking about? Don't amateurs, we're paying them, so let them do it. Tyler began to leave the house more often, as there was no conversation, and on the rare occasions when we met, he made a disgusted face. The word divorce started floating in my mind. Hey, wanna go see the cherry blossoms in the botanical garden? Cherry blossoms? We had been. We had been living with minimal conversation for 2 months. It was early spring when suddenly Tyler said something that left me baffled. Smiling, Tyler continued to talk to me, but I was at a loss. Recently, we've just been passing by each other, right? I thought I'd like to have a little talk while looking at the beautiful flowers. Well, okay then. Alright, let's go, Tyler cheerfully exclaimed as he began pushing my wheelchair. Just the trivial conversation after so long eased my weary heart a bit. Maybe the recent discord was because we hadn't been talking enough. It was then that I began to think that way. You know, I'm out of money. I really need your insurance money soon. What? Us along with Tyler's unheard voice. My wheelchair was pushed vigorously and began to descend the slope on its own. And unable to understand the situation, I panicked. Still, I desperately reached for the brake. You better get out of that wheelchair fast, or you're gonna die. Up from behind me as I tried desperately to stop the accelerating wheelchair. Tyler's merry voice echoed. Desperately, I pulled the wheelchair brake with my hand. He was a man careless with money, but we were supposed to have vowed love that day. As I struggled atop the uncontrollable wheelchair, anger bubbled within me more than sadness. Oh. The tire caught on something, and I was thrown from the wheelchair. A loud noise followed behind, and I lost consciousness then and there. Then looking sideways, Tyler was crying on the next bed. I continued talking while laughing at his most foolish face and voice ever since we met. You really thought I was the reason we couldn't have kids? Well, I was considerate and didn't tell you, but your father knows. It's a lie. Blood completely drained from Tyler's face. Actually, we had been undergoing infertility treatment for about 3 years since our marriage. At that time, Tyler reluctantly took the test. As a result, it was revealed that the cause was with Tyler. However, after consulting with my father-in-law, I decided to keep it a secret from Tyler. My father-in-law had the view that Tyler, who's mentally fragile, would not know what to do if confronted with that fact. Hearing my father-in-law's view, I was troubled, but in the end, I continued the infertility treatment without telling Tyler the results and stopped it at Tyler's request. After telling him all this, Tyler suddenly called someone on his smartphone. Dang, you had an affair, didn't you? The kid isn't mine, is it? Watching Tyler yell like that at the first word, I understood who he was calling. Tyler seemed to be getting arguments from the other end. At the other end, occasionally his voice would leak out sharply. We're still people in them. I burst out laughing at the words. You had an affair too, didn't you? Tyler is saying, this isn't the time for such talk. But to me, both the woman who deceived Tyler to pay child support for another man's child, and Tyler, who spent all the money on child support and affairs, and then pushed his wife off a hill for insurance money, seem equally terrible. It seems the call was unilaterally cut off, and he couldn't get through no matter how many times he tried calling back. That bastard. Was she only after the money? Sorry to interrupt while you're heated up, but we're not done talking. Amy. It seems Tyler finally remembered I was there, looking at me and sweating. I brought the conversation back with a smile. Do you remember signing the papers when we decided to save that $1,000 you spent? I sighed at Tyler's attitude. He probably planned to go back on it later anyway. I picked up my smartphone from the table and showed him a photo. See, it's written here, right? In the event of misuse, divorce, and the entire amount spent up to the discovered month will be paid to the wife, Amy. It's a scam. That was not there. Oh, but it's properly checked, and there's a signature too, right? It's even notarized, isn't it? Tyler looked frustrated, and then he immediately appealed to me with desperate eyes. Come on, Amy. I was just possessed. Please don't say divorce, okay? Besides, I can't pay such a large amount. Divorce is settled. I can't do it anymore. But don't worry, you can pay the spent amount in installments. Seeing me like that, Tyler had a face like he was the victim. I sighed and called out to the figure hiding at the entrance of the hospital room. Please come in, Dad. Seeing his father-in-law enter the room, Tyler shouted. My father-in-law, with a red face, as if his veins might burst, was glaring at Tyler. This is the end of our relationship. Then, what are you talking about? My father-in-law glared at Tyler and came over to me to apologize. I'm truly sorry. I won't ask for forgiveness, and it's fine if you don't. Please file a complaint. I'm really glad Amy is safe. Thank you. He must be crying. Large drops of water were falling onto my bed. I glared at Tyler. The reason for making my beloved father-in-law do this? Then what? Don't you feel anything seeing this? It's your fault. I don't know why I married you. So you were after the money too. I feel like all the beautiful memories have been tainted. My voice is the lowest it's ever been in my life. Tyler is surprised, looking at me. While I'm surprised at myself for deeply loathing Tyler, I put on a smile. Shut up. I'm not paying. Too bad, payment is a done deal. As I said this, my father-in-law, looking scary, told Tyler, I will be watching you until the payments are done. I couldn't see, but his face must have been terrifying as Tyler's face went pale and he was shaking. Excuse me for interrupting. It's in this worst atmosphere, a middle-aged doctor in a white coat entered. Coming straight to me, the doctor handed over a document. Is there a reason you are not receiving treatment for your leg? What? But to my head in confusion, I looked at Tyler, who was staring at the doctor with a pale face. The doctor continued speaking with a puzzled look. If you have surgery on your leg, you'll be able to move again. Didn't you hear that when you were diagnosed before? I didn't hear. I looked at Tyler. Tyler was trying not to meet my eyes. Seeing that, I had a bad premonition. Tyler, you lied to me, saying that the illness would never be cured and that I would never walk again. At Tyler's non-committal reply, my father-in-law again yelled at him. I turned to the doctor and asked. I didn't hear the diagnosis directly at the time. Could you please tell me? Yes, Amy, your illness is a temporary paralysis caused by a herniated disc hitting the spinal cord, leading to blood flow issues. Since some time has passed, you'll need rehab, but you will be able to walk. I couldn't stop my tears at the doctor's words. I was wrong to trust Tyler and not hear the diagnosis, but my disgust for Tyler, who lied about a problem involving a person's life, grows by the minute. There's not a shred of affection left. Tyler, what's going on? Tyler, don't just stand there. Say something. My father-in-law's yelling echoes in the hospital room. Tyler's shoulders shudder and he suddenly starts crying. But if Amy is free to roam the world, I'm always left behind. If she's in a wheelchair, she will always stay home, and she won't try to have more fun than me, right? So what? Your selfish jealousy has forced me to live in a wheelchair for 2 years. Knowing I could have surgery to eliminate the pain and paralysis, and you kept silent. That's the worst. At my words, Tyler hangs his head in exhaustion. I look at him with cold eyes. Both the doctor and my father-in-law seem angry at Tyler for selfishly denying me my chance for treatment. So, Amy, may I explain the surgery to you tomorrow? Yes, please do. I instantly brighten up. The doctor smiles back at me warmly. Just that gives me hope for a bright future ahead. I will instruct the nurse to separate the rooms. No, I don't want to be separated from Amy. The doctor glances at Tyler's sudden loud refusal, ignoring him. Then he says to me, see you tomorrow, and leaves the room. Amy, you're not really going to divorce me, right? I am amputee, remember? I know I was wrong to keep quiet, but think about our current situation. Despite my father-in-law yelling at the incredibly selfish Tyler, he stands his ground. I silently watch, but seeing no sign of it settling down after about 10 minutes, I reluctantly speak up. Then, I'm going to work, and you'll handle the chores. If you ask for a service, you'll pay for it. Oh, and I'll deduct that amount from the living expenses. I can't live like that. What are you saying? Buddies, wasn't strange. It's strange. Be kinder to me. I'm in a wheelchair for life. Tyler said so, his breathing harsh. What I had said was all that Tyler had said to me, but Tyler seemed to not notice. Hey, do you realize? Fun. Realize what? What I just said is what you said to me? As I said that, Tyler finally seemed to notice, his face turning pale as he froze in place. My father-in-law had also forgotten to shout, his face turned pale. This has been a big shock to learn that the son he had desperately raised had said such terrible things to his wife. Well, let's talk through lawyers from now on. And about the compensation, too. Wait, Amy. As Tyler called my name, a nurse came into the room. It seemed that I was moving rooms so Tyler couldn't easily barge in anymore. Tyler resisted to the end, but with one leg, he couldn't get up from the bed and could only scream. Well, Tyler, goodbye. That for me? But Tyler's screaming, as the last thing I heard, I was pushed by the nurse and left the room. My father-in-law met my eyes and nodded, and I bowed my head in return. That was the last time I met Tyler. A few months later, I received divorce papers from Tyler through the lawyer, and the divorce was successfully concluded. I hear Tyler is quite disheartened, and is living under the strict supervision of my father-in-law. He seems to have been able to keep his clerical job, but it appears that the reason for the divorce has somehow leaked. Now, his colleagues who were previously concerned about his injury upon his return are now looking at him coldly. Tyler brought this upon himself, but I overheard him lamenting, My colleagues are harassing me. I couldn't help but bitterly smile, thinking that he hasn't changed a bit. I still meet my father-in-law occasionally after the divorce with Tyler, partly to check on his situation, but mainly because we share a hobby. Initially, my father-in-law seemed apologetic, but recently he has returned to his usual self. Upon investigation, it was revealed that the woman Tyler had an affair with was married and had been married to the real father of her child. I sent the evidence of the affair and child support transferred to the woman's husband. It seems he found out about the affair from the evidence I sent, and a huge dispute ensued. It appears they also got divorced. A resentful letter arrived at the lawyer's office, but it was ignored. As for me, I underwent surgery immediately after that and spent about 6 months in the hospital for physical therapy. Thanks to my father-in-law's arrangement, I was able to continue working while staying in a private room. After being discharged, thanks to ongoing physical therapy and regular checkups, I can now walk with a cane. My recent daily routine includes taking a walk around the house. Recently, I exchanged contact information with someone I met during those walks and promised to go for a meal. He's a very kind person who helped me when I stumbled and fell over a rock. These days, the exhilarating feeling of a new spring coming makes my excitement unstoppable. Acting all high and mighty over just $300. I don't need that chump change. Chuckling, my son and his wife looked down on me, hurling harsh words. I've been supporting them for a decade since they said they were struggling financially. Despite seeing the two of them never settling into steady jobs, I bit my tongue and tried to find a way to help, but look at the thanks I get. I believed that someday they'd appreciate my feelings and soften their attitude, but that day never came. Isn't that a clear answer? I can't help but be angry at them, who laugh and are like, it's not enough. It's just pennies. After taking away 10 years of my time and the money I saved up. For 10 years, I've dedicated myself to my son and his wife without saying a word. But that ends today. My name is Mary, a homemaker in my 50s. After my husband passed away, I've been living alone. And we had a son. Just after graduating from college, he moved out and now has a family with his wife. They live nearby, but honestly, we are not on good terms. They are, let's say, a bit problematic. After college, my son started working at a company where he met his wife. She quit her job upon marrying, becoming a full-time homemaker. But less than a year later, my son quit his job. Apparently, he had trouble with his boss. Thinking he would easily find a new job, he threw everything away over one dispute. But life did not go the way he thought. Despite searching, he could not find a suitable job, and he eventually gave up on working altogether. His wife did not seem interested in working either, and in a few months, they fell into financial hardship. To support them, I decided to send them a modest $300 a month. They cried and thanked me for the financial aid. Every day, I hoped they would get out of their hardship and be able to support themselves. But now 10 years later, my monthly $300 is not something they are grateful to receive. It has become something they think they are entitled to. For instance, 1 month was hectic with family events, and I could not find time to meet my son and his wife on the day I usually give them their monthly allowance. Late that night, I heard someone knocking loudly at the door, and it was my son and his wife visiting. Mom, we need the allowance on time. You're starting to forget things because you are getting older. My son teased, but exhausted and sleepy from several busy days, I was like, I'll give it to you another time. Please go home for now. Then his wife, her face flushed with anger, was like, this is a monthly thing. You need to give it on time. Just because you are my husband's mother does not mean you can act this way. And she grabbed me by the collar. Shocked by the sudden confrontation, I ended up handing over the already prepared $300 to my son and his wife. Notes, if you had just handed it over honestly from the start, this would not have happened. I do not want to use physical force with you either. Yeah, listen to us and behave. If you ever lose your mind, we are the ones who will be looking after you. It would not hurt to get in our good books now, right? I was infuriated by their audacity, but if I retaliated now and upset their pride, they might never be able to stand on their own 2 feet again, just like when my son had to quit his job. So swallowing my feelings, I just smiled, apologized, and did as they asked. Looking back, I believe I should have stood my ground then. But I had an overwhelming desire for them to somehow get back on track, and that is why I felt so powerless. Just the unpleasant memories with them were not just that. One day at work, I received a call from a good neighbor, Mary. She asked if we could talk about my son and his wife. I apologized and said I would be there soon. Apparently, when the neighbor returned from shopping, she noticed signs of a break-in. After checking the security footage, she was shocked to see that the culprits were none other than my son and his wife. Although her place was a mess, nothing was stolen. Knowing my situation with them, she chose to contact me first. I left work early and got in touch with my son and his wife. The three of us went to apologize. I kept apologizing, but my son and his wife showed no remorse. The neighbor looked displeased, but the matter was settled when I agreed to compensate for the broken window. However, on the way back, they said something unbelievable. They asked, "Why are old folks so petty? We just wanted to borrow some stuff." I was stunned and could only utter, "What?" But they continued, not even looking at me. They said, "Yeah, we broke a window and made a mess, but we didn't steal anything. Isn't she overreacting?" I couldn't believe my ears. My son just nodded along. I couldn't understand what they were talking about and remained silent, watching the scene unfold before my eyes. I should have spoken my mind to them without being scared. Doing so showed my weakness. From then on, I noticed their increasingly aggressive behavior, but fortunately, they didn't cause any major issues except for the incident with the neighbor. So I continued to provide for them, hoping they would one day become independent. Whenever they asked for something, I would buy it if I could afford it. My son wanted gadgets to socialize with his friends, and his wife wanted luxury brand items so she wouldn't feel inferior to others. Even on my days off, they would call me over to do household chores. I started working tirelessly. They started asking me for more than just money. I knew that living requires money, and they had neither the means nor the will to earn their own, so I had no choice but to support them. No matter how tired I was, I remained committed to my job and did any chores they asked even if I was exhausted. As a result, I became worn out. Dark circles formed under my eyes, my skin became rough, and dizziness became a regular companion. My son and his wife laughed at me and said, "You look like a monster." Moreover, his wife pointed a finger at me and said, "She's given up on being a woman." I didn't even have the energy to fight back against such harsh words. I had a gut feeling that I was reaching my breaking point, but I believed that if I didn't speak up, things would never change. That if I didn't keep going and working, both their lives and mine would fall apart. So I did my best, pushed through, and somehow managed to keep going. Truth be told, I had wanted to lean on someone, cling to them, and just give up a long time ago. One day, as I was doing chores at my son's house, a minor incident triggered a fight. Because I was exhausted and on edge from many days of strain, every little action of theirs irked me. His wife then made a snide comment, acting all high and mighty over just $300. My son, falling for her words, was like, "We don't need such chump change," and handed back the $300 I had dutifully given them that day. They were like, "If you're gonna give us money, bring a decent amount." They mocked and looked down on me. Strudopax, those words lit a fire in me. "Fine, I'll stop then," I said without thinking of the future or considering their feelings. The words just spilled out of my mouth. They both tilted their heads in confusion, but when I started packing my things to leave, they burst out laughing. "Come on, Mom. Stop joking. If we left you, you'd be all alone. You wouldn't have the guts to live on your own without your precious son and his wife. Mary, when did you become such a joker? That joke wasn't funny at all. You had me worried for a second there." They thought I was just speaking out of frustration and wasn't serious about stopping the financial support. They continued to taunt me, "If you've got the guts, go ahead. But if you do, we'll cut ties with you. Think you can handle being all on your own? Come on, you'd want to take back those words in no time. There's no way your stubborn mom could do something like that, right?" They had no idea how backed into a corner I felt, yet they continued to treat me poorly. I wondered what was in it for me to keep supporting them, buying them what they wanted, and doing their housework. Wasn't I just being used and taken advantage of? It feels like I'm just getting the short end of the stick. Taking advantage of my feelings, treating me like a lackey, and having this attitude even when I'm at my wit's end. They might be family in name, but with the way they were acting, I couldn't see them as such. I'm serious. "Remember you asked for this," I said, yet they just chuckled, taking it as a joke. "Go ahead and try. But you'll regret it soon. I can already see it." Those words of my son lit a fire in my fighting spirit. I'm gonna send them straight to hell. I'll show them just how valuable a person I am, and how unforgivable it is to act so brutally towards me. As I packed up to head home, all I could think about was how I was going to confront them. For starters, I cut off all the support I had been giving to my son and his wife. Just as I had promised, no more money transfers, no financial aid, and no more helping around the house. Good thing. This, from my perspective, after having lived for the sake of my son and his wife, taking this action without considering their needs was something I had never done before. Now I could take a break without worrying about them. I could spend my money for myself and do the choice just to my satisfaction. I realized firsthand how wonderful it feels to live this way. My son and his wife thought I'd never be able to sever ties with them and live on my own. But in reality, this life of independence that I had been yearning for over a decade was exactly what I got. Furthermore, I decided to put more pressure on them. In fact, the apartment my son and his wife live in, I had taken on the lease for them after they got evicted from their original place because they fell on hard times. Of course, I was also the one paying the rent. Having decided to cut off all support for them, it didn't make sense to continue helping with the rent. So I contacted the real estate and decided to cancel the lease. The person who managed the apartment, while aware of our situation, was accommodating. They were given a month's notice to leave, or else they would be reported. That night, I texted my son and his wife to tell them that if they don't move out of the apartment within a month, it would be a problem. They read the message immediately, and not even 5 minutes later, my phone was ringing. "Mom, what the hell is this? Where are we supposed to live?" My son shouted as soon as I answered. I could hear his wife freaking out in the background. "You might have forgotten, but I was the one paying for that apartment. I told you I was cutting off all help, didn't I? So of course I canceled the lease too, right? We never agreed to that. You said you'd stop sending money, but we thought you'd continue with everything else." I chuckled at his naive expectation and thought, really? Well, they said such hurtful words to me. They intended to keep accepting my support except for the allowance. It made my head spin to think of the ridiculously naive mindset of my son and his wife. I'd been treated however they pleased all this time. Even when I said I didn't like it, I always complied with their demands, giving them both money and time. But I was wrong, because they're the type to take advantage as much as they're pampered. In that case, it would have been much better to make my position clear and make them listen. I was the one who gave them an allowance, provided financial support beyond that, and did the housework for them. Any way they look at it, I held the upper hand. And they should have been grateful and respectful to me. Yet, they treated me with complete disrespect, like I was some kind of servant, a mere tool, an ATM using me however they liked. And then, to add insult to injury, they even laughed at me when I was at my wit's end. Why did I try so hard for such an insane couple? Even when they treated me unfairly, I kept my mouth shut and let them have their way. Doing all that, they never reciprocated my feelings. Instead, they just kept taking advantage of me. Only when I reached my breaking point did I realize how lowly and selfish they truly are and how they never really saw me as family. They might have seen me as a tool, but never as family. Not even a bit. Why didn't I realize this sooner? Why did I continue to give my all until I felt so overwhelmed? Why did I keep believing in them? Looking back, my past actions seem pitiful. Believing that one day they'd stand on their own, I tirelessly supported them. But all that meant nothing. As I regret the past, my anger towards them wells up. I need to give them a piece of my mind. I won't be satisfied until they admit their wrongs and apologize. Praying this way, I spoke up again. I'm going to stop the allowance, but continue with the other support. What are you thinking? That's not going to happen. At my words, my son tried to interject, but I cut him off. No buts. Do you understand? Your lives have always depended on me. If you upset me just once, if I ever felt like not helping you, you'd be done for. Luckily for you, I'm naive enough to keep hoping that maybe one day you'll be independent, that perhaps one day you won't need me to get by. That's right, Mom is kind. That's why you're not really going to abandon us, right? You just said those things in the heat of the moment, and now you can't take them back, so you're doing this, right? It's okay, we forgive you. Let's try to be a family again, okay? Don't be stupid. I've come to my senses. Despite all the support, you guys don't even want to be independent, do you? You just want to keep living comfortably on my dime, don't you? Try to backpedal. My son responded, that's not it. We did want to be independent, but we can't. We don't even feel like looking for jobs. My wife feels the same. Chins, we did our best in our own way, but it was just impossible. Almost laughing at his response, I couldn't believe they had the audacity to say they did their best in their own way. I've been keeping an eye on my son and his wife for several years, and neither of them seemed to be making any effort to find jobs or live frugally. They would just living comfortably off me every single day. single day. How does that translate to they tried their best in their own way? Listen, Mom, we're really grateful for everything you've done. I mean, we couldn't put it into words, but you've always gone above and beyond for us. We always knew that we were able to live because of you, and that we'd be lost without you. So why don't we try again? You need us too, right? They kidding me? I don't need you. On one hand, there's a guy who's still stuck on some trouble he caused 10 years ago, never settling into a steady job and just being a layabout. And on the other hand, there's a woman acting like a stay-at-home wife, never admonishing or supporting her husband, just doing whatever she pleases. Do you think I need people like you two? He couldn't be more wrong. Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure because of you two? It's day in and day out, working to make money for you, and even when I'm not working, I'm doing chores for you. There's no way that isn't tough. I've come to realize that I'm not naive enough to want to be family with you two. After all that, don't say such harsh things, Mom. We need you. Without someone like you supporting us all the time, we would be lost. Despite my words, my son kept insisting on his perspective without paying any heed to mine. As I was wondering what to do next, I suddenly heard a shout like, "Give me that." And then his wife came on the line, Mary. To be honest, I've been frustrated with my husband's selfish behavior too. Most men go out, work, and support their family, but he just wanders around, not working for my sake. Every day I regret marrying him. I feel just as wronged as you do. I'm a victim too. Please, help me, even if it's just me. I can't do this without you. Then, out of nowhere, his wife tried to abandon him to save herself. Stunned by her audacity, she continued, "I'll do anything you need me to, whether it's housekeeping or anything else. Kiss me however you want. Please, Mary, don't abandon me." After those words, I could hear the couple arguing again over the phone and struggling to take control of the call. Just annoyed by the noise, I frowned, and then it seemed like the phone got knocked out of hand and got disconnected. Days passed without a call back from them. Apparently, their relationship deteriorated significantly after that incident, and they decided to divorce and go their separate ways. They blamed each other and even started fighting over money. The dispute went on until they finally got divorced. After the divorce, both tried to contact me, but by that time I had already blocked both of their numbers. I never heard from them. My son started working day and night at a factory job, barely making ends meet. On the other hand, his ex-wife tearfully ran back to her parents' house and confessed everything. They reprimanded her severely. She came to apologize, escorted by her parents, but she cried so much that I couldn't understand what she was saying. Since then, I've been living for myself. And for 10 long years, I had been bound by their presence and never had a moment to cherish my own time. Living a life centered around myself felt incredibly refreshing and irresistible. Although I ended up alone without them, I found comfort in that. I've no idea what the future holds. There might be a time when I won't be able to live just for myself. But for now, I think I'm just gonna live for me. Please leave. The cold words came from my mother-in-law, Catherine. The moment it was decided that her son would be transferred abroad, Catherine took the house away from me and my daughter. Just with nowhere else to go, I headed to the park, holding my 2-year-old daughter. Lost and wondering what to do next, suddenly I was surrounded by police officers. "Please come to the station." In the pouring rain, shivering from the cold, I followed the officer to the police station. Yep, an unexpected person was waiting for me there. "My name is Emma, and I am turning 35 this year. I met my husband Bob at work, and after dating for a year, we got married. I quit my job when we married, and 2 years ago our daughter, Lily, was born. And currently, I live with Bob, Lily, and my mother-in-law, Catherine. We considered buying a house, but given Catherine's bad knees, we thought it would be best to live somewhere with good transportation access. Buying an apartment was cheaper than a house at that time, and it has an elevator, which makes daily life easier. Catherine also preferred the apartment, so we made a down payment and took out a 35-year loan. Bob's company often requires its employees to travel or relocate, but since we bought the house, we were told he wouldn't be transferred for a while. However, he travels on business more frequently than other employees, about once a week to other states. Having a 2-year-old daughter, I honestly feel stressed when Bob goes on his business trips. In the beginning, Catherine was cooperative, but now she doesn't help with childcare at all. In fact, she creates more work for me. For instance, she just eats and leaves her dishes around, and she leaves cooking utensils without rinsing them. I'm often busy with Lily, and by the time Bob comes back from his trips, I'm exhausted. By the time I notice, the food has dried on the dishes, making them hard to wash. Even when I ask her to at least rinse them, she just apologizes and promises to be careful next time, but it's all talk. Strangely, she rinses them when Bob is around, and I only realized this recently. At first, I thought it was okay since she occasionally rinsed them, but now I see it differently. I believe Catherine is intentionally giving me a hard time. For example, when she asks if I need anything from the store and I say no, she later mentions after I return that she actually needed something. And this happens quite often. Considering Catherine's bad knees, I believe moving was painful for her, so I wanted to help as much as I could, but my desire to assist is slowly fading. I thought about discussing it with Bob, but he's already stressed from work, so I didn't want to add to his burden. Catherine's behavior started soon after we began living together, and it's been going on for several years now. When I consulted with a friend, she said, "That sounds like she's bullying you. Why not talk to Bob? I think he might help." If I were to consult with Bob, there's a chance Catherine, who has no relatives, could end up in a facility. At that time, I felt maybe it would be better for me to endure it. However, one day, an event occurred that changed how I felt. That day, I planned to drop off Lily at my parents' place. My parents love Lily and occasionally have her over for sleepovers. Thanks for always bringing Lily. We look forward to these visits. Why don't you stay over sometimes too? I'd love to, but I'm worried about leaving Catherine alone. I'll head home. Don't spoil Lily with too many toys. After enjoying a brief chat, I decided to return to the apartment where Catherine awaited. Upon arrival, I realized something. I had left the keys at home. Though initially concerned, I remembered Catherine was home and decided to ring the intercom. I dialed the room number on the intercom, but there was no response. Had she have gone out? Thinking that, I decided to wait outside for a while. However, Catherine never returned. This went on for about 2 hours, and by 7 p.m., it had gotten dark. Just then, another resident seemed to be returning, and I followed them in once they unlocked the main entrance. Catherine rarely goes out at night, so I was certain she was at home. With that thought, I pressed the intercom button outside our apartment. Though I could hear the ding-dong sound from inside, there was still no response. After waiting by the door for some time, I heard a faint sound from within. This meant Catherine was indeed inside. I tried the intercom a few more times, but Catherine refused to come out. Chill out. Feeling defeated, I stayed at a nearby motel for the night, planning to return when Bob was back from his business trip. What happened? Chill out shopping. Actually, I told Bob that Catherine had locked me out. He was understandably upset on my behalf, but Catherine just said, "Oh, maybe I didn't hear because of my hearing." I'm getting old, you know, trying to hide her smirk. Just relieved to be back inside. I grabbed my keys and went to pick up Lily, who was staying at my parents' house. After discussing the situation with my folks, they said, "Sounds like she's giving you a hard time. If it becomes too much, you're always welcome back here." Exactly. Remember, you're our precious daughter. Their comforting words brought tears to my eyes, but in front of Lily, I quickly wiped them away and headed home. For a while, there were no more issues with Catherine. Then, out of the blue, Bob's international transfer got finalized. A permanent transfer, not a business trip. Yeah, we finally bought a place, and now this international assignment. What do you think? I feel it's best for you and Lily to stay in the US, but can you handle living with my mom? Well, I couldn't answer Bob's question immediately, considering the potential stress for Lily. I decided it would be best for the two of us to stay in the US. Soon after the decision, Bob had to leave for Europe. Although he was concerned about us, he seemed too swamped with work to give it much thought. So, the life of me, Lily, and Catherine was about to begin. However, as expected, living with Catherine turned sour. The moment Bob left for Europe, her attitude changed dramatically. That day, a storm was approaching, and it was dangerous to venture outside. And yet Catherine dropped a bombshell on me. Now that Bob's gone, wouldn't it be better if you and Lily move out? Excuse me, what do you mean? Just what I said. I'll take over from here. I just feel I can't relax with strangers in the house. I'd appreciate it if you could leave right now. I was in complete disbelief at Catherine's audacity. It's true that Catherine and I are related, but I've always tried my best to make our cohabitation comfortable. At the very least, I've always treated her as family. However, to Catherine, it seems we were just an afterthought. I was considering gathering my things and heading back to my parents' place when she told me, instead of dilly-dallying, "Why don't you just get out?" Before I knew it, just as we were, Lily and I were thrown out of our own home. No matter how much I banged on the door, Catherine wouldn't come out. Lost and confused, I carried Lily through the pouring rain to a nearby park. There was a roof there, which I thought might offer some shelter from the rain. Ideally, I would have checked into a motel or returned to my parents' place, but I had left both my wallet and phone inside the house. I felt helpless and sat in the park, trying to figure out our next move. I'm not sure how much time passed in the torrential downpour. Overwhelmed by fatigue and cold, I began to doze off. It was already dark, and even though it was summer, the cold was biting, and I feared we might catch a cold. As bad as things were, it seemed like the only option was to walk to my parents' home. But it would be a 3-hour walk. As I was contemplating our situation, I saw 2 distant lights approaching. Given the rain, I couldn't see clearly, but the lights belonged to 2 police officers. I thought maybe they could help, but before I could approach, one of them called out to me, "Are you Emma? And is this little one Lily?" I was surprised the officer knew my name, but weakly replied, "Yes, that's us." Then the officer said, "Please come to the station with us." "Why the police station?" I wonder if something was amiss. Urged by the officer, Lily and I got into the patrol car. We were freezing from being out in the rain for so long, but the officers had thoughtfully brought large towels. "You might need these. We've got some spare clothes back at the station for you," they said kindly. Just wondering why they knew about us and why we were headed to the police station. I inquired, "How did you know where to find us?" They responded, "We'll explain everything once we're back at the station. For now, just try to relax." Exhausted, I soon fell asleep and woke up to find we had arrived at the police station. Following the officers inside, to my surprise, I saw Catherine and my uncle. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" He was contacted by Bob. He explained Bob suspected you might be having issues with his mom, and since he's abroad, he wanted me to keep an eye on things for him. According to my uncle, Bob had spoken to him about this issue before. He said Bob had requested him to keep an eye on things since he couldn't be there himself being overseas. It turns out he saw us in the rain earlier today. He was considering taking us in himself, but thought Catherine's behavior was extreme, so he reported to the police. That's why the officers knew our whereabouts and came to get us. Catherine had also been asked to come to the police station. She sat on a sofa, glaring at me seemingly clueless about why she was there. "Why do I have to be here? I have a bad knee, you know. If Bob was here, this wouldn't be happening." Catherine was making her case, but this entire situation was a result of Bob asking my uncle for help. In discussions with the police, there was a high likelihood that the events might have legal implications. Hence, I was advised to consider hiring an attorney. An attorney? That's an overreaction. I just locked the door, that's all. I didn't do anything else. Do you even realize what you've done? You threw Emma and a little child out in torrential rain. That's not something forgivable. My uncle stood up for us and stated that. In fact, I was the rightful owner of the house. That's impossible. Bob is the head of the household. He's the rightful owner. Now that he's not here, it should be mine. Catherine was under the impression that Bob was the owner, but she was mistaken. Actually, my uncle runs a real estate business and got us a great deal on a condo. Bob had recommended that the property be put under my name, because I was indifferent at the time, but now I'm glad I heeded Bob's advice. Later on, following my uncle's advice, I decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer said it would be challenging to evict Catherine, therefore the best course of action might be to place her in a care facility. Upon hearing this, I immediately called Bob to explain the situation. Bob hadn't anticipated the issue would escalate this much and said he'd like to return from Japan to discuss it properly. He also said he was considering placing Catherine in a facility. Unaware of all this, Catherine, despite being at the police station, casually snacked on some crackers. Since I couldn't return to the house with Catherine, I decided to take shelter at my parents' place until Bob returned. Bob would be back in a week, giving me time to ponder our next steps. If Bob wouldn't support me, then divorce seemed the only option. Regret filled me, wishing I had sought advice sooner. A week later, Bob, having returned from Europe, was at the house with Catherine. So moved back home from my parents' place. Given the urgency of his return, Bob had to go back to Europe soon. He could only stay in Japan for a few days, so we needed to discuss our next moves. I heard some things from Emma's uncle. Is all of that true? It's all lies. I haven't done anything. Emma's plotting something to evict me. Catherine stubbornly refused to admit any wrongdoing. She even claimed I was scheming to evict her. Bob, who should have been on my side, seemed to want to consider Catherine's perspective. I understand. So, do you have any evidence to prove Emma's plotting something? Evidence? Of course not. I see. Emma, do you have any evidence? To be honest, I've been so busy with work. Due to work, I haven't been able to keep an eye on things. I'm not sure who to believe. I handed Bob something I had with me. What's this? I gave Bob a voice recorder I had been using. It contained recordings of Catherine, who not only evicted me, but also often berated me. When Bob played it, he heard Catherine's voice saying things like, "You're such a worthless wife. I wonder why he even married you." Hearing this, Catherine quickly began to defend herself. This is taken out of context. Everyone has their moments, right? I was just frustrated at that time. But it was just this once. Even as Catherine claimed this, a barrage of recorded verbal abuses played from the voice recorder. There were countless instances, and even some which weren't captured on the device. Bob's hand, holding the voice recorder, trembled with tension and anger. Meanwhile, Catherine looked guilt-ridden. "Mom, what is this about?" Bob asked, but Catherine remained silent. "If you won't answer, then I assume this is all true. If so, I need to protect Emma and Lily. You understand that, right?" I had never seen Bob angry in all the years we'd been together. Catherine, probably seeing this side of Bob for the first time too, looked frightened and shrunk back, unable to say a word. Afterward, there were several discussions until Bob's return to Europe. I asserted that I could no longer live with Catherine, considering Lily's presence and not wanting a repeat of this event. I felt I wouldn't be able to handle it. Bob seemed to share my sentiment, leaning towards placing Catherine in a care facility. However, Catherine strongly opposed the idea, complicating the discussions. Regardless, I decided to sell the house. "So you can't stay here anymore. If you don't want the facility, you'll need to find another place. How dare you decide this on your own? I won't allow you to sell the house." Catherine resisted the idea of selling the house, but it was a tough request to accommodate. That's because Lily and I had decided to move to Europe. Bob regretted not being more present for his family and wanted to be there for us moving forward. Although I was hesitant about living abroad, knowing Bob would be with us reassured me. Besides, Lily is only 2, and it would be good for her to practice her communication skills in Europe. Therefore, selling the condo, which still had a mortgage, was the only option. If we left it as it was, Catherine would have to cover the mortgage. Considering she's on a fixed income, she doesn't have that kind of money. Given her future prospects, someone should be around to assist her. Despite our efforts, Catherine was adamant about not moving into a facility. So we had to forcefully place her in one. "I'm sorry, but I've got to head back to Europe. Could you handle any procedures required here?" Bob asked before heading back. Thus, with help from those around me, I managed to finalize Catherine's admission into the facility. The facility staff keep me updated on Catherine's condition, but it seems she's not doing well. It'd be one thing if she were just down, but apparently, she's been giving people there a hard time. Just before heading to Europe, I went to visit her to see how she was doing. But she lashed out at me, saying, "What's the big idea? Why have you locked me up in this place?" She even vented her frustrations on the staff, complaining, "How can you expect anyone to eat this food? Isn't there something more flavorful? This isn't nearly enough. The bed's uncomfortable, and other residents keep making snide remarks. I'm going to lose my mind in here." When I apologized to the staff, they were very understanding. "It's all good," one of the staff members assured me. "We see this kind of behavior often. Just leave it to us. We'll keep you in the loop, and if anything comes up, we'll give you a ring. So don't you worry." Despite all the harassment I received from her since we used to live together, I couldn't help but feel worried as I headed to Europe. Upon arriving in Paris, Bob met me at the airport, and we headed to the apartment we had rented. They say rents in Paris are higher than in Texas, but since Bob's company gives him an allowance for housing, we were lucky to find a spacious and affordable place. The neighbors in our building are super friendly and have been very kind to me, even though I don't speak French fluently. Yesterday, a neighbor shared some wine and cheese with me. In return, I gave them some mac and cheese. Meanwhile, I'm gradually learning French along with my daughter, Lily. I know there's a limit to self-study, so I've also enrolled in a language school. There are a lot of Americans there, many of whom, like me, are new to France. I've made some friends there, and am really enjoying my life in Paris. Back in the States, I had to always be concerned about Catherine, which often prevented me from fully enjoying outings with friends. But here, I can indulge in leisurely lunches just the way I like. The only concern right now is Lily. She's still too young for kindergarten. Kids here usually start kindergarten the year they turn 5, so I hope she picks up enough French by then. Fortunately, Lily seems to be catching on pretty quickly. I'm thinking of getting a job once Lily starts preschool. Bob says he's okay with me staying at home, but living in Paris has made me want to explore more opportunities, seeing how ambitious and confident people are here. I feel more confident now that I have ignited something within me. I've become friends with a waitress at a nearby cafe, and she hinted that there might be a job for me there. The cafe is not only popular among the American community, but also among those who are learning English. There may be challenges ahead, but since coming to France, Bob and I have been communicating much better. I'm more comfortable expressing my feelings, and I believe that no matter what happens, we will face it as a family. Right now, I'm happier than I have ever been in my life. Let's move in with my parents starting today. They are my parents, so you won't mind, right? My husband suddenly said this. I was shocked and holding back tears. I stood in front of him. It has only been a few days since my father's funeral. This was just a few days after my father, who had been battling illness, passed away. The chaos of the funeral was still fresh. Ignoring my feelings, my husband packed his things and left. His destination was the villa that I had just inherited, which my father cherished. Shockingly, his parents were waiting there, and they decided to stay at the villa. My name is Natalie. I just turned 33, and have just started out as an independent designer. I am married to Alex, and we have been living together in an apartment that we signed for 3 years now. Perhaps I am quite well known in my field as a designer. I have a good income, so the apartment is under my name, not my husband's. I lost my mother when I was in college, and within this past year my father was diagnosed with a malignant tumor. In other words, cancer. Although I lived away from home when I lost my mother, after joining a design firm, my father always kept in touch and maintained our relationship. The news of my dear father's illness hit me hard. As his condition worsened, I had sleepless nights. How is your father doing? What did doctors say? Is it bad? Should I, as his son-in-law, visit him? My husband would frequently ask about my father's health, but his tone seemed less about concern and more like he was anticipating my father's death. He always seemed discontented because he earned less than me. I wished he would be proud of my career achievements and support me. However, his behavior was like a competitive child. My father said he wants us to cherish our time together and not worry about him. But your father will be gone soon, right? So we should spend more time with him now, so we won't regret it later. I couldn't help but increasingly feel disgusted towards my husband. Initially in our marriage, he was loving, and our time together was enjoyable. Our time together was always pleasant, but his insensitivity towards my father's illness was agonizing. I couldn't accept the change in him. He works from home. I also planned to work from home after becoming independent, but he said he couldn't concentrate, so I had to rent a separate office, requiring me to commute. It was convenient for visiting my ailing father, but my husband, despite being home most of the time, never helped with chores. I managed my father's hospital visits, made necessary arrangements, and completed my work tasks. Yet, when I returned home, I would find the mess he made, dirty dishes and leftover food. He only sought his own comfort and was indifferent to my struggles and stress. I felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness and exhaustion. Eventually, my father passed away. During his lifetime, we had decided to dispose of our family home. So, while traveling from the hospital to the funeral home, I was busy with funeral preparations. However, while Alex was with me, he was either making calls, disappearing, or focusing on himself, not helping at all. Alex, please help me. It's hard for me to handle all of this by myself, especially now. I tried telling him, but he took a call just as he was about to respond, and later he just laughed it off, saying, I'm busy with work. Anger and disappointment towards my husband grew inside me. Was it because I lost my father too soon? His words felt even colder. Thus on the funeral day, he was deeply engrossed in conversations with his parents, and every time they returned, they all had smug smiles on their faces. The other attendees looked at us with strange eyes, and I felt increasingly isolated. Still, I managed to complete the funeral and burial smoothly, and also wrapped up the inheritance procedures. My husband suddenly proposed, let's start living with my parents from today. They're my parents, so you shouldn't mind, right? If you do, then maybe we should get a divorce. I was in turmoil. My grief over losing my father momentarily pushed aside as I urgently responded. Live together where? In this apartment, there isn't any room. How would that work? The lack of room was because we turned one room into an office and another into storage for his work materials. While our apartment is family-friendly, my husband had always said and thus used it lavishly, "We're not having kids." With a grin, my husband said, "It's that villa you inherited." I was dumbstruck. Although we had sold the family home, I had kept the villa because it was my father's favorite, and of course I had inherited it. That place was filled with memories of my father and held a special place in my heart. I intended to maintain it as per his last wishes, but my husband seemed to disregard my feelings entirely. We really shouldn't use that villa. But he wouldn't listen. Incredibly, he said that his parents had already canceled their apartment lease and finished moving into the villa. They probably communicated about this during my father's funeral, delegating responsibilities for the move. He likely believes the villa, being more spacious than our current place and located in a quiet area, would be a better living space. But that villa is filled with memories of my father. Living there with you all will be difficult. Remember that. Even though I protested, the move for his parents had already begun. When I pointed this out, he couldn't even hide his irritation. "You always think only about yourself. Always busy caring for your father. Always getting called away. Do you even know how much I had to tolerate your daddy issues?" I was stunned by the raw feelings he revealed. "Now that he's finally dead, it's your turn to listen to me. He took an entire year, the old geezer." He continued to spew cold, harsh words. I was overwhelmed. I didn't want to believe this was who my husband truly was. But he definitely mocked both my father and me. I remembered my father's frail form curled up in the small hospital bed, fighting his illness. He had fought death to not leave his only daughter behind. Though I was left behind, would my father have wanted me to be at the mercy of my husband's whims? In that instant, I realized my love for my husband had vanished completely. At a time when I should have been mourning my father's death, my husband showed not a hint of emotion but rather seemed to revel in it. A tightness gripped my chest, making it hard to breathe. Nevertheless, I suppressed my feelings and repeatedly warned my husband. "It's fine to live in the villa, but you'll regret it." Laughing, Alex replied, "I won't. If he was going to be that adamant, then I'd accept his resolve." I packed only a day's worth of essentials and left the house. Seeing the minimal amount of stuff I'd packed, Alex looked suspicious. I simply responded, "I'll be back to tidy up later." Truthfully, I didn't want to speak another word to him. I had no desire to see the faces of his parents, probably elated over my father's death and the subsequent move. Yet I silently followed behind Alex. Though it's called a villa, it's just a house in a coastal residential area. The neighborhood is filled with everyday people leading their lives. However, its close proximity to downtown and its location make the land quite valuable. Before exiting the train station, the scenery unchanged from my childhood continued. When we arrived at the villa, my husband's parents were already inside. I felt suspicious, and it seemed that my husband had taken a key without my knowledge and made duplicates. This realization deepened my unease. The fact that they had been surreptitiously planning to move into the villa without telling me made it difficult for me to trust them. When his parents looked around the villa, their eyes sparkled with delight. It was a single-family home, but it was filled with furnishings that my father loved. Some slightly different, Western-styled furniture probably reflected my mother's taste. Wow, this villa is fantastic. No more living in that cramped apartment. "Living here, we're so blessed," exclaimed his mother. "The view from the second floor is wonderful. Your sneaky dad, hiding such a great house. He should have shared it. We're family after all," laughed his father. Their voices of joy grated on my nerves. They seemed to take my father's death too lightly. They saw the villa and inheritance merely as a luxury and beautiful stroke of luck. Indeed, this place is the best. "We really should be grateful to your father-in-law. Thanks for leaving this villa for us," said my husband, joining in on their tactless remarks and laughing. Then, claiming it to be a moving-in celebration, the three of them began opening beers and preparing some snacks. I let out a deep sigh, feeling the memories of the three of us at that dining table slowly being tarnished. I spent the night with my emotions guarded. Early the next morning, I was jolted awake by his mother's shrill scream. "It has begun," she cried. I woke up to see my husband and his father frantically running to the source of the scream, and I followed shortly after. Because in the bathroom, his mother lay on the floor, clutching her foot, her face contorted in shock. The floor suddenly gave way. She exclaimed, her face a mix of fear and astonishment, her panting echoing throughout. It didn't give way. Maybe I slipped. My husband and his father inspected the spot she was pointing at, looking perplexed. However, the floor was gleaming and perfectly intact. Still, she kept insisting that the floor had given way. After watching them suspiciously examine the floor, I finally spoke. "Did you step on that part of the floor with a slightly different color?" The three of them looked at the spot in amazement. Pushing through the crowd, I stepped on the part with a different shade. "Huh," I exclaimed, realizing that it was just a trick of the light. My husband exclaimed in surprise. When I stepped on it, the floorboard made a crisp sound and sank a little. But when I took my foot off, it rose back to its original position. If you weren't aware and stepped on it, it would surely feel like the floor gave way. See, the floor sinks a bit? It's like a trap. What kind of contraption is this? Is it a defective house? Explaining calmly, I faced their pressing questions. It's not defective. My father had the house made this way. Wait, it's a trap house? Actually, my father was a hardcore ninja enthusiast. This villa, a culmination of his time and money, was his masterpiece and treasure. The times he brought me here during my childhood were so that he could adjust or add new traps during the summer or Christmas holidays. So there are traps like the bathroom's pitfall spread all around the house. Shelves you shouldn't touch, floorboards you shouldn't step on, doors that won't open without a specific sequence, hidden doors, hidden rooms. It was a secret villa filled with my father's dreams. Naturally, it's not really suitable for everyday living. I've been visiting since I was a child and have instructions for all the traps from my father, but my husband and his family might not fare as well. I did tell you it's best not to live here, and it's a place filled with my father's memories. Everyone in the family knows how obsessed my father was with ninjas. In fact, it's more surprising that after being married for so many years, you didn't know. My husband, insisting he hadn't heard about the traps, was left speechless by my retort. His parents, of course, claimed they were hearing about it for the first time. They raged at my husband, blaming him for canceling their apartment lease and rendering them homeless. As the commotion continued, my father-in-law and husband got caught in another trap and tumbled over. The sight of the two sprawled out on the floor brought a brief smile to my face. But immediately, I composed myself and said, "Please, make yourself at home." They'd been blinded by the villa's luxury, assuming it was a comfortable residence. They'd ignored my warnings and failed to acknowledge my father's evident hobby, and now they faced the consequences. Even when made aware of the potential dangers, they responded dismissively, saying it's fine. What's the big deal? It's not a problem. Hearing that, I responded with a confident smile. Well, I have to prepare for my move, so I'll be returning to the apartment for a while. And I left the villa. But of course I wasn't really preparing for a move. I took a few days off to sort out my father's belongings. As expected, just 2 days later, my husband and his parents couldn't handle the life full of traps in the villa. It was a short time, but I felt positive as I reflected and started making plans for a new life. Sections now about my father's villa. After I moved out, it apparently gained quite a reputation as a tourist spot. It became known as the Mystery Mechanism Mansion, often featured in the local newsletters. Whenever the villa was occupied, like during my father's time, visitors would come from all over to see it. I do recall in my memories unfamiliar faces touring the villa, local children playing, and my father proudly showing off his prized mansion to many people. I believe my father had listed both the villa and our ancestral home's phone numbers in those newsletters. And now the ancestral home's number no longer works. If there are inquiries, they would be directed at the villa. While I had honed my Chinese skills enough to handle calls from foreign guests, it seemed my husband and his parents hadn't. On top of being constantly on edge, because of the mansion's many traps in handling visitors and phone calls in foreign languages, they returned to the apartment looking utterly drained. How about we all live in this apartment? The one to broach the subject was my mother-in-law. Desperately wanting my father's villa, they gave it up in just 2 days. Instead of tea, I handed my husband the business card of a divorce lawyer. We can't live together anymore, so please leave. Taking a deep sigh, I tried to explain patiently. Firstly, I couldn't stand his hasty decision to move in with his parents without any consideration. He never once discussed it with me nor sought my understanding. And to begin with, I was handling all the household chores, and he never once cooperated. While the household matters became solely my responsibility, causing immense stress, he never showed any signs of considering my feelings. He completely disregarded my feelings, acting selfishly even to the extent of moving in with his parents. There's no way I could continue living with someone like that. When my husband uttered such nonsense, I couldn't help but snort in amusement. How can I love someone who hoped for my father's early death and rejoiced when he passed away? I kicked the 3 of them out. This is my house. You should be the one to leave. My husband yelled, but I calmly retorted. Do you want to be reported for trespassing, or will you leave quietly? Did you forget that this apartment is in my name? At my words, they went silent. They had neither a house nor savings, and they were economically reliant. But before they could sweet-talk me, I was determined to evict them. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much saved up. Having been evicted from the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they apparently now live together in a small, run-down apartment. This place is full of traps, much even smaller than the apartment we had before the villa. My in-laws complained constantly. My husband apologized at first, but gradually started to resent them. They, being elderly, seldom work and quit after just a few days when they do. Their savings and pensions are dwindling due to their continuous moving. They constantly complain about each other and argue daily. Considering their current living situation, where neighbors complain about noise and they retaliate with annoyances, it seems they will need to find a new place soon. My ex-husband once comfortably worked from home in the apartment, but now in their new place, there's no luxury of a dedicated workspace. His reputation plummeted and sales dropped significantly. Now he barely makes ends meet with late-night convenience store shifts. Juggling multiple part-time jobs seems more feasible now. It seems my in-laws believe their biggest mistake was getting roped into my husband's sweet talk. Every time they argue, they blame him for the issues with the trap-filled mansion. Alex would just turn beet red and shout in frustration. You should have researched that house more. At least this wouldn't have happened. It's not my fault. The woman kept it a secret. Don't talk back. If you had a proper relationship with her father, this could have been avoided. How did we end up in this mess because of our son? But let's not forget that they were the ones overjoyed at inheriting that mansion. I will never forget that. Taking inspiration from my father's passing and recent events, I incorporated ninja designs and shared them on social media. Before I knew it, I became quite popular, and one day, a major cosmetic company reached out. They wanted a package design with an Asian flair featuring ninja elements. I instantly thought of my father. Of course, I eagerly joined the project, and after putting my heart and soul into it, it turned out to be a great success. My career became even more stable, and I had happy news to share at my parents' graves. The trap-filled mansion still stands. It is a place filled with special memories of my father and our family, so I've decided not to sell it. I planned a proper visiting schedule, and with some tweaks, I have realized I can offer free access to tourists and local kids. Luckily, media interviews started pouring in. My dad's trap-filled mansion became a major selling point, and when I said I wanted to use the funds for maintenance, some media outlets were willing to pay a hefty price. Soon, articles about the mansion were translated into French online, dubbing it a wonderful ninja legacy. Donations started pouring in from abroad. The donor was an elderly ninja enthusiast, just like my dad. I am grateful for the donations, but it seems I will be busy managing the mansion for a while. Meanwhile, at the mansion, the children's eyes sparkle every day. Wow, is this the legendary trap mansion? Are there real traps? Which ones? Show me. See, local volunteers help ensure the safety of the children while they play. Beside them, tourists are amazed at the secret doors that open when floorboards are pressed. Oh, wow, this is amazing. We are so lucky to see such a special place. What other tricks are there here? Even though my dad has passed away and I ended up divorcing because of the issues surrounding his legacy, I believe I have gained more than I have lost. The mansion is transformed into a new place where strangers can enjoy themselves and share memories of my dad. Ivan Reborn, looking forward to the future.